Right, are you ready?
Guess so.
This Downtime podcast is brought to you by BVM Moto. Shop online or in-store for great deals and get professional advice on your favourite bikes, parts, clothing and accessories.
Hello and welcome to another BVM Moto Downtime podcast with Craig and Laurence from BVM. Not much has happened over the past couple of weeks, but it's all starting to kick off a little bit in the trials world with the ACU announcing the new British Championship, how that's going to be running. And there was a Zoom meeting a couple of days ago where the general public were allowed to voice their concerns and so on. And it does seem to have kicked up a bit of a fuss. Laurence was actually able to join that meeting and knows exactly what's going on. So we're just going to talk you all through what the changes are for the 2025 British Championship season. And I think, should we start with the Youth Championship?
Yeah. They've basically changed all the British Championships. So there's different, all three. So the Youth Championship, the Ladies Championship, and the Adult Main British Championship. So it's quite drastic what they're trying to do. Yeah, so basically they are changing all of the different British Championships. They're changing the youth, they're changing the ladies, and they're changing the main Adult British Championship. So yeah, if we start, like as Craig said, if we start with the youth, it's very different to the normal youth classes. What they're trying to do, they've basically got 1, 2, 3, 4 youth classes these will be a separate event away from the main British Championship,
Which is what it has been anyway, hasn't it? The youths have always been away from the adults. They've never really been combined over the last God knows how many years, have they?
Yeah, the youth have always been away from the adults, other than a few invited youth riders that have been able to do the main Adult British Championship, which has always been a bit of a kind of a contentious issue about who's invited and who's not, and is so-and-so good enough, or, all of that side of things. And I think that's part of maybe what they're trying to do is the youth championships kind of almost it needs to be split, I think, because of the age ranges of the riders. But when it isn't part of the main championship and the events are separate, they lose that kind of spectators, don't they? And the event's much smaller. So they're still going to have a separate youth championship, but it's more for the younger riders. So the first class that they do is for the kids on the very, very small wheels. And that's it's called like a debutant small wheel, or trial for youth is what they're calling it. And that's for riders who are above the age of 6, basically. On 20-inch wheel bikes, so the real kind of small Ossets and TRS 80s. I don't think they haven't said whether they're petrol or electric, so I imagine, I don't know, would a TY80 count? Could you still ride one of those? Maybe.
You probably could. I'm not sure if you'll see many these days, but there's nothing really stopping you, I don't reckon, looking at that.
Yeah, or maybe an automatic little Beta. There's a few kind of petrol bikes still around, isn't there? But what's really interesting is they're basically saying that bottom kind of category is for entry level riders who may be new to the sport with minimal experience. So kind of before, maybe the British Championship is kind of been seen as quite hard. I think with these youth classes, they're trying to, or this separate kind of youth championship, if you like, they're trying to kind of encourage kind of more riders to take part.
It looks like they're just trying to get bums on seats and people to attend a youth event rather than it being elitist.
I think that's what they're trying to do a little bit. They've got, there's kind of 3 other classes. They've got the next class up is called Trial 3, which is foundation, and it's like medium wheel bikes. So kind of, it's the only medium wheel bike a Beta 80 these days. Oh no, Osset. So yeah, the medium Beta 80 and Ossets.
Yeah.
So you've got a choice of two brands there really with those. Obviously the 80s, petrol, and the Ossets electric. And that's for a really wide age group. It's like 6 to 12-year-olds. And it's for riders with 1 or 2 years experience. The section's being reflecting a mixture of club beginners and novice level, which again, they're not aiming that at that maybe that higher level. I would have said that probably equates to kind of youth C class that it used to be, or similar to like a youth C class.
Yeah.
And I'd say the youth C British Championship is probably a bit harder than certainly around here, our club beginner stroke novice level. I think you'd agree.
Yeah, I'd definitely say that. Yeah, it's probably pushing on a bit from that, actually.
Yeah. And obviously that's kind of like a 12-year not 12 years, 6-year kind of like age range.
Yeah.
I think
there's a lot of difference, isn't there, between a 6-year-old and a 12-year-old in size and strength and development.
Yeah, it was quite interesting. It was like Sam Connor, who was the main kind of person at the Zoom call from the ACU, kind of explaining all this. And he did explain it very clearly, kind of much better than I'm explaining it now, I think. But I think by kind of having the big like age gaps, kids grow at various rates, don't they? We have people all the time in the shop who are like, what size kit should my 12-year-old have? And it's like, well, how big's your 12-year-old kid?
Yeah.
And I think with that, maybe it can be based more on like experience and kind of ability rather than size. You know, if give you an example, you would have been much bigger. Well, you're much bigger than me now, but when we were 14, you were like, how big were you?
Well, yeah, I think I was already 6 foot plus by the age of 14.
Yeah.
Where you still haven't got there yet, have you?
Yeah, I know. I reckon 14-year-old Craig would be bigger than.
Maybe in another 10 years you might get there.
Yeah, I might get him. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. I think that's quite a good. It's a good idea in in a way, and I think something that. There's a lot of negativity, or it's quite I don't say a lot, but there's quite a few people who don't like necessarily change to things. I think it's quite important to look at these things with like quite an open mind, really. And
yeah, definitely. It's worth a try, isn't it? They're trying to mix things up a bit.
Yeah, which is, there has been, want to go back in like, I can remember back in my day, kind of riding like some of the youth nationals, and the AB nationals were kind of one thing and the CD nationals were another thing. And to get, there was like 35 odd riders, I remember, in like youth B class.
Yeah.
And now basically a lot of the youth nationals, if you do ride one, you're almost guaranteed some championship points for the top 15. So it kind of says, kind of how things have changed and numbers have dropped. So this is maybe a way of getting them back.
Yeah, it does seem like over the last 5 years or so, I think it seems to be very elite, doesn't it, the British Championship youth? The fact that they're not getting the entries, and yet there's definitely more than 10, 15 riders of that age range who can ride a bike.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know if you see quite so many people rock up on maybe 2-3-year-old bikes, or people kind of rock up to like their local round maybe a little bit. I don't know if that quite happens in the same way as it, I never did full years of British, full seasons of British Youth Championship. It's just you do the ones that were like, couple of hour drive away, kind of, and it's a little bit, it is a bit different now to, how it used to be. And it's, I think the ACU are just trying to, they're trying to do something to kind of shake things up a little bit.
Yeah.
They like the next kind of age group up then is it's called Trial 2 Youth, which is basically like the big wheel bikes, and this is like kind of, but you're still limited to 80 cc's or 7 brake horsepower if you're like on an electric bike. So like the full size kind of wheel bikes. And that's for like 8 to 13-year-olds. So once again, quite a wide kind of like age range.
Yeah.
And I think this is where it's probably started to get, maybe a little bit more challenging. Though they're still saying that the section severity is akin to like novice kind of club level.
Yeah.
So I think they're like letting people, kind of, they don't want to kind of kill the youth riders off. I think they want them to be able to kind of go to these trials and enjoy them. And then the final kind of youth British Championship class, this is going to, like I say, running it as a separate event, is what they call TRIALGB Youth, which is like their Aspire category. That's kind of like, you've basically got 10 to 14-year-olds who can ride like big-wheeled up to 85cc petrol bikes, and then you've got 12 to 14-year-olds who can ride up to 125 bikes. And I think, what do they say on that? They say for riders aspiring to develop their technique and skills and more challenging hazards while having the opportunity to adapt to a 125cc, it's bridging the gap between the traditional Youth C and Youth B levels. That could actually, I feel that's a very important point, the bridging the gap, because some of our kind of local riders, like Edwin James is a good example. He was kind of getting podiums in Youth C a couple of years ago.
Well, you say that. He was actually fighting for the Youth C Championship. Yeah. And it went down to a tie decider at the last round.
Yeah.
He was on the podium every weekend. And then, like you say, he moved up because he had to, because of his age and such, to Youth B. And the transition was...
Yeah, the transition was very hard.
It was going from kind of being a real competitor and being able to ride his bike well to struggling to get through sections, really, wasn't it?
Yeah,
and I think he
was losing hundreds of marks.
Yeah.
Kind of like, I think, and that's kind of, if someone that's challenging for the British title then moves up and then can't do the next route, that's not good.
Yeah,
for
it's too big a gap, too big a jump between the two.
So that could be quite interesting what they're trying to do there. I know it's always difficult, and there's always kind of compromises, and it might not suit kind of absolutely everyone. They're really trying to kind of make the championship a bit more kind of, hopefully a bit more kind of rider friendly. I think they've got like a dedicated section advisor is going to be appointed for like the whole of the youth championship, it's very different, isn't it, with like the different standards of sections and trials that you have kind of all over the UK. They all need to be of a similar standard.
Yeah, they could do with being standardised, couldn't it? Because we were talking about with Tyler Wren, who's only really like a centre over from us. Like his expert route, our expert route in this area in the Western Centre is more like their clubman expert route in the Southwest Centre, isn't it?
Yeah, but Tyler came and rode our Western Centre Championship round at the weekend on a twin shock Fantic. And
it did have tech forks in it, though.
Yeah, it is quite tricky, twin shock Fantic. But he did take the win. He beat us all on all our kind of modern bikes. He is a very talented rider, but he was quite shocked that I was riding expert route. I kind of walked up an expert section. He was like, "What are you doing?" And he knows my ability, and obviously he thought, this is going to be similar kind of standard to how it is down the Southwest, where I probably, I wouldn't ride expert route anymore. And I was like, "Oh, still an expert is here, Tyler," So it's it's kind of shows you the different standards. So
yeah, but going back to this, these youth categories, it still is a British championship, though, isn't it?
It's still a British championship. It's basically a point we've completely missed is the fact that the ladies or the girls are going to do, there's going to be a class for, in each route there's going to be a boys and girls class, but the girls are going to be, in this championship as well. So there's going to be a trial for youth girl or lady, and all the way through the championship. So they should get some big entries, which will kind of help with promoting the event and kind of make it a bit kind of easier.
Okay, so what you're saying there is they're going to have the youths, it's going to be boys and girls. It's not just going to be youth boys.
Well, it never was just youth boys, was it? But you could ride as a girl. But I think they were thinking that the standard of the ladies is a bit lower, isn't it? And they had their own separate.
Yeah, but now the ladies are being put in with the youth boys. The ladies haven't got their own separate youth event. Or anything like that.
No, which is, that's kind of, it's interesting. It's a bold decision, I think, by the ACU that, we well, we had a ladies round in our centre, and last year we both went for a day each, didn't we? Me on the Saturday, you on the Sunday, and we helped support that event as a shop. And so we have got a little bit of kind of experience of what one of their championship rounds was like last year, and the atmosphere was absolutely brilliant. The ladies and girls, they really like that it's a ladies and girls only event, don't they?
Yeah, it was very community based, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. They're all kind of camping overnight. They're kind of a lot of the older girls take the younger girls kind of under their wings. Kind of even like help them kind of like warm up and different things.
I think that not for all, but for some of the girls and women, it's almost like their kind of safe place where they don't want to be riding with the boys or the men as such. They wanted their own event.
I can see that.
I see that. You could see it anyway, couldn't you? At the trial, there was definitely a very strong community vibe between all the riders, whether they were young or older.
Yeah,
it was, and it was nice to see, really, because trials is community based.
Well, I think at the end of the presentation, it was one of the riders' birthday, and like another rider had like bought them a cake, and they kind of they did the presentation, and they're like, "Oh, it's your birthday," they really kind of, it is a very community spirited thing, the ladies British Championship. So I don't know whether there still be some ladies only events. I'd like to think so, because it is something that I know a lot of the ladies were quite a little bit upset about, is the fact that now they're kind of in with the boys and there isn't that ladies championship.
Yeah.
But the other side of it is some of the top ladies are very, very good riders, and some of the top lady kind of young youth lady riders are very good. So it's, if they're in with the boys, they can be challenging them, and there's no showing them how to do it as well. So it's it might raise the kind of the profile of the kind of the ladies youth championship.
So are the girls riding those classes like you've just described, the trial 4, trial 3, trial 2, or have they got a different class written?
I don't know on that yet. I don't know. I don't know if anyone exactly knows that.
Oh, really? Is it not? Right.
Because I think there is a lot more information to come out of this. I think in a way they did do maybe the little Zoom kind of presentation a little bit early, because they were saying, there's a full championship kind of, what's the word, regulations that are all going to be printed up on this, which there is.
Okay, so it's still kind of a little bit up in the air.
Yeah, a little bit up in the air and open to change. Another kind of point, basically, it's stop allowed as well with the youth championship.
Okay, even for the, say, trial 4 to TRIALGB youth.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's basically 1 minute time allowance, stop allowed. Which personally, it's all the stop, no stop. It's a massive debate. We could maybe we'll talk about that in another podcast. But it's separating it again away from kind of club level. Around here, it's very much no stop. Different areas have different rules, don't they? But
yeah,
I'm not sure on that. I prefer like natural kind of flowing sections. I think there's room for both, but.
I can see the benefit with, when you watch the youths riding, and, when the real little ones, if they do ever get in a spot of bother, if you're kind of running to the letter of the law, you could 5 nearly every rider every time they have to put their foot down because of...
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I could see it working for the youths. It gives them a little bit of leeway and a bit of... it doesn't mean like their hopes are gone straight away if they get in a little bit of spot bother in a section.
Yeah, and I think I suppose the point maybe I'm missing as well is that the idea of the British titles and British Championship is to breed riders, or develop riders. Breed's probably the wrong word, but develop riders who are going to go on and ride the World Championship. So,
and that is stop allowed, isn't it?
And that is stop allowed. Yeah, stop allowed with a time limit. So I think is a broader problem in trials. That how. There's some very, very good riders who can do all the stopping and to do the trick riding incredibly well. and yet they're not that good on like the natural going. And I think trials is splitting. It's kind of, you look at kind of the guys when they turn, guys and girls when they turn kind of like 16, 17, they almost like decide whether they're going to ride the British Championship or kind of stick to centre and kind of maybe do some S3 nationals. And they're almost kind of trial splits, I think, quite drastically, kind of with what kind of style of riding you want to do, which whether that's a good thing or not, and not really sure. It's quite you can just imagine in maybe 20 years time, are we going to have like two completely different sports, one where it's a bit more kind of
more indoor style, maybe
more indoor style, maybe you're allowed to go backwards and all of that side of things, and one where it's completely no stop and your wheels aren't allowed to leave the ground. But so it is it's interesting to see kind of how the youth side of things kind of work out. But there's a bit of basically that takes care of the youth riders up to the age of 14, but obviously you're not really an adult until you're 16 is when you can be kind of ride as an adult in trials. So they've basically the older kind of youth riders are allowed to go into the main British Championship. They're going to be, it's not going to be kind of invitation anymore. Like if you're youth B rider or youth A rider, you're welcome to kind of get your entry in and rock up, I think.
So that's the youths pretty much covered. Why don't we move on to the adults and what changes they're going to be making to those classes now?
Yeah, well, the adults main British Championship, that has the biggest change, I guess, is the fact that there are now a proper ladies class, because the top ladies used to ride, didn't they? But now they've actually got their championship takes place the same weekends as the men.
That's good, because Emma Bristow, that is, hasn't actually been competing in the ladies British Championship for a number of years now, because she's decided to move to the expert class, so to speak, hadn't she, in the adults before? So none of the other girls were kind of really around that often in that. So it's nice to see that there'll be more women at these events with the men.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think that, and it might raise the profile a bit of like, to have the women kind of like battling in the same sections as the men and more of them there will be hopefully good. So you've got the trial GB women and the youth A girls and the youth B and youth A boys. But just to give you a little bit of kind of to run through the routes, basically, the top route's still there. Obviously, that's trial GB. The guys really, professional riders fighting for the British title. You've then got Trial 2. So that's his own route. Obviously, some very, very good riders in there. And then there's two other routes. There only ever used to be one other route. So you've got the expert route, or what used to be kind of like the expert British Championship, and then you've got another route kind of below that. So the if you start from like the kind of the easiest route, that is going to be Trial 2 women. So they've got two kind of women British kind of classes there. You've got Trial 2 women, and you've got the Trial GB women ride a harder route, and then also on the same route as the Trial 2 women, you've got the Youth A girls, and then the Trial Youth B. So yes, interesting that they've gone back to when in the youth classes they were, they've got new names in this main British Championship. They're still Trial Youth and Youth A and Youth B, basically. So yeah, I think it'd be quite hard maybe to get the standard right till they've kind of, how they're going to do that with the standard of the routes. Yeah,
I definitely wouldn't want to be the first person running one of these events, would you?
No, definitely not. No, it's quite hard and kind of seeing who's going to enter the different routes, because I know there was a comments at the Zoom presentation. We couldn't actually talk, but because I think they thought it might get a bit, bit tricky with people suddenly like unmuting their microphones to talk. But there was a comment section, and one of them, and it is a valid point, is the fact that when kind of Emma and like kind of Alice Minter and Alicia Robinson, take it not so much Emma, she's been way up in the, I think she win a round? I think she's won a round, doesn't she?
Yeah, she has now won a round this year.
But she's quite away in front of the kind of the other ladies, particularly on that kind of that next level up of sections, isn't she?
Yeah, when it starts to get even bigger and more technical, she kind of really excels there, doesn't she?
Yeah. So for kind of like the other trial GB women, when they've ridden in the expert class, kind of last year, they have lost kind of quite a few marks, haven't they? Kind of, and you don't want it to be kind of
don't want to put them off.
You don't want to put them off, no, and you don't want them to be kind of like 3 or 5ing every section. And that was a point that was raised, and apparently the trial, that expert class, the trial GB women kind of route, which is the same route as the youth A's are going to ride as well, is going to be quite a bit easier than it's been in other years.
Okay.
And they're going to try and encourage like the top kind of, Sam Connor said, I think it was about the top 5 riders from Trial Expert to move up to Trial 2.
Okay.
To kind of maybe bring that route kind of more suitable, because it's the same with the Youth A riders, isn't it? Like the invited Youth A riders, there's a few that can kind of, can kind of compete, but there's also some of the scores you see for the invited Youth A riders are very, very high, and I'm not quite sure, whether it's a bit, there comes a point, isn't it? You're trying to get the next world champion, but I think we've talked about it before, haven't we? There's a point where it's like you're losing so many marks, you're not really learning anything.
Yeah, there can be a bit of a fine line of kind of pushing yourself and pushing your boundaries and such, and the line can be crossed where you're literally crashing your brains out, not really learning anything, losing confidence.
Yeah.
And that type of stuff can be really damaging sometimes.
Yeah.
So it's hard to get that good mix, isn't it, of pushing yourself but not taking it too far.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's, yeah, it's kind of, if you're literally kind of 3 and 5 in every section, like Craig says, we've all been there, haven't we, when we know there's no way we can do a section, and you kind of think, well,
yep, on a regular basis.
Yeah, like why am I attempting this section when I know there's no way that I can do it? Particularly if you've been around, as me and Craig have been around a few years, and you kind of like, no, I couldn't, I've tried to do this style of section for the last 20 years. I'm not suddenly going to be able to do this now.
Yeah. We know our ability, which you have to remember as well, like when some of the youths, they don't necessarily know that.
I guess not.
And some of them will do, but there'll be times where maybe their excitement and such might get the better of them. But...
Well, then you haven't got fear as a youth rider. I
never did. No,
compared with I'm scared of basically everything now. And when I was a kid, it was just like you just like hit anything and you'd kind of somehow be all right. And a big crash was fun, and now
we'd laugh about it, wouldn't we?
Yeah.
We'd laugh about some of the big crashes. There was a time where I remember you having that massive crash off that undercut step, and you could have like broken your wrists, but we were just all laughing.
Yeah.
But now I'd be like, oh my God, are you okay?
Yeah. That was all trying to psych you out for an intercenter team trial, wasn't it?
It didn't really work though, did it?
Didn't know. I was like, I'll get up this step. It's when we were riding for opposing centres in the intercenter team trial. I was like, I can show the Wessex boys how to do it, and ended up almost hurting myself.
Yeah.
But yeah, and now you kind of like think of the rider, being able to do that as a young kid, and now you're kind of like, you look at things and you think, oh, I might hurt myself. But yeah, so it's going to be it's interesting to know how whether like what will happen with the expert class, whether the top 5 will move up and maybe find it hard in trial 2, or whether they kind of stay down and take the win, and how the organisers will mark it out. Like, you tend to look at the entry list, don't you, of a trial, and work out kind of who's entered, and you want to kind of take kind of a reasonable score off the winner, particularly at a British Championship. And then it's like, well, how big's the range? Particularly if they're allowing kind of any like youth riders to enter. There's nothing to stop a youth A rider that's maybe just a youth A kind of club rider that wants to do their local round and not necessarily hasn't got the best ability to be able to compete. And how do you kind of pitch it for all of them?
And I see, is Sam Connor going to be going to each round to help mark these events out to try and keep a standard kind of level throughout the championship?
Yeah, Sam's really taken on. I think he's done a lot of work behind the scenes with this championship, and he's taken on the role of the section advisor, which is something that I think everyone agrees is really needed in that. And it's something that could almost be needed in kind of at centre level as well. Sometimes you kind of think
in any championship, really.
We get it a lot where people are very new to trials and they come into the shop, don't they? And they're like, "What's a good trial to do?" And you're like, "Do I do club trials?" And it's like, "Well, that club's a bit hard, and that club's a bit easier." And no one really knows like the standard of each route, do they? And that's something that varies nationally, but it's quite difficult to. You can see why it's difficult to kind of get that kind of all lined up. Then they've kind of below that kind of like trial expert, TRIALGB women, you've then got a kind of a slightly lower trial 2 women, as they're calling it, which they do a trial 2 women in the World Championship, don't they? That's, they say that that's open to all female riders, but excluding those who've finished in the top 3 of the women's main British Championship in the past 2 years. So kind of, I think that might be quite a competitive class, because there was kind of at the ladies' rounds that we went to, wasn't there? There was kind of like a second group down that were, they were all kind of like could all ride a trials bike, to a reasonable, well, to quite a high level, but they were quite removed from kind of, Alicia and Alice and Caitlin, weren't they?
Yeah, but they were, like you say, they were very, very capable riders. They just weren't necessarily wanting to do some of the really technical, or maybe some of the real big stuff.
Yeah.
I could see that getting quite a good, healthy entry, hopefully.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of decent female riders out there, so it'd be nice to see them turn up to these events.
Yeah, and then on the same route, they've also got the Trial Youth A girls and the Trial Youth B. So I don't know. I think maybe they could be like a similar. Maybe they're all similar standard of riders. It's kind of hard to kind of really, I'm not sure on like the Trial Youth B whether some of the like the real top Youth B boys will be kind of the lowest scores in that route. Maybe, I'm not sure. It'd be interesting to see how that works out. One of the kind of the real kind of it's something that was kind of brought up at the meeting, and the ladies and the youth were a bit I think it's been raised that they were a bit concerned about going into the men's British Championship, and when time's tight and the riders are rushing, and some of like the men might bully the youth and
might get a bit argy-bargy.
Yeah, get a bit argy-bargy, like trying to, we've all been there, haven't we? Kind of you're tight on time at like a national, and I know there's been times where you've been rushing all day to get in on time, and you get I've always kind of myself have always kind of like taken the time quite seriously and kind of like tried to get a move on, and then you get towards the end and the top boys who've been like hanging back all day all of a sudden want to get in front of you because they're going to be in on time, and it's a bit like elbows out, isn't it?
And I think it's something that over the last couple of years, it's actually been something that they've really struggled with in the British Championship is time.
Yeah,
they've got a lot of things wrong on the time side of it in the past couple of years at certain events.
Yeah,
there's been a lot of rushing around. So hopefully, with them having so many more riders and routes, they're going to have a much larger time limit, because it's no fun if it's just rushing around and being one on who can get around the fastest.
Yeah, they are going to have quite a wide time limit. They did say about
that's
that.
Good.
And they also said, and it's something that, having never ridden a British round before, and I know you did a couple of rounds with this, is they're going to have the break between the 2 laps.
Oh yes.
And part of the reason for the break, and I'd never thought of this, is basically so there's not so many riders on the course at the same time.
Yeah, I remember like I did a year with at the British where they, like you say, you had a start time for your second lap. And yeah, it was a bit of that, and also to make sure you didn't actually catch up the top route too quickly.
Yeah.
It was trying to keep you all separated, so we weren't kind of having that issue of trying to get in front of other routed riders and such.
Yeah.
It is, as a rider, it's tricky though, because I remember I might have even sent you like a video or something at the time. It was wet, freezing cold in Devon. And I had to wait like 20 minutes before I could start. And I was huddled in the back of my van with the heating blasted out. And I was freezing cold, shaking, trying to get warm before I was allowed to get out and get riding and get warm again. Yeah. But it's just all something that you've got to kind of get used to if you want to do these bigger major events.
Yeah, well, it's the same as the World Championship, isn't it? They have a break.
Yes.
You know, but
it obviously works because they, like I say, are using it.
Yeah, but they don't have they're never freezing cold, are they?
True. No, they're normally hot, sweaty.
Yeah. But yeah, so that'd be interesting to kind of see how that kind of works, them all going together. But I think they're also they're going to have a very strict kind of approach, like zero tolerance to any form of kind of even kind of swearing at yourself kind of type, kind of like bad language or bullying anyone or anyone pushing in queues. They're going to be really strict with that side of things, you know. Okay. So which is good.
Which is good. Yeah,
it is good. It's something that I'm not sure that it's never really a problem like so much at kind of club level, I don't think. But
no, not even at, say, like the S3 Nationals, really. I wouldn't say it's an issue, but it shouldn't be.
No.
You know, I think that's right, that rule.
Yeah.
Like, no one should be getting abused by riders. No marshal should, you know, they're giving up a lot of their time and effort for it, so they definitely shouldn't get.
Yeah, we've all seen it. I've seen it at like British rounds where riders have been like kind of kicking off and kind of becoming quite like aggressive to officials, you know.
Not good.
I think kind of like questioning your score in a nice way and is like one thing, but you know, to kind of actually be like kind of name calling and being aggressive is quite something else.
And has that ever worked? Which no, it's like no way is that going to change the score, like you starting to act like that, is it?
No, so, exactly. But I think it's something that they want to bear in mind, that there will be like ladies and youth riders at these events now.
Yeah.
So, and it's unprofessional, isn't it? When you kind of, you know, we've both got young kids, and you don't want to go to, you know, here's the pinnacle of our sport, and there's, you know, a rider has a crash and he swears. And it's you know, kind of. But I know over the years, both you and me have been guilty of that. You know, when the red mist descends. But you know, you have to remember that, you know, you're representing the sport, isn't it? You know, and we've got enough kind of issues and enough threats to our sport without kind of upsetting people through kind of language issues, I guess. So another interesting point is they're basically all routes are allowed minders now.
Okay, I see that. And was it an extra £20 to have a minder, is that?
I think so.
£120 per event weekend with a minder, or £100 without an assistant. Which I think £20, that's not bad going, is it? Are they allowed bikes?
I think so, but it's at the discretion of the organisers.
Right. So maybe depending on the event and how far around it is, whether they'll be allowed them or not. Maybe.
Yeah. It's a difficult one, isn't it? I think I don't know. It's not difficult for the top two routes. I know it was weird a few years ago where, I think, is it still the case, Trial 2 didn't have minders last year?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, they ended up minding for each other, the riders.
And I know we all mind for each other, don't we, at kind of centre level. But when it's like a British Championship and the Trial 2 sections are pretty bloody big, aren't they?
Definitely they are. Yeah.
You know, they're not like, you know, they're the type of sections that, you know, you want a minder on. And even the expert class, there was how did that work? Because when you were riding some, I think you were saying people were like kind of, they had a minder, but they didn't, basically.
Yeah, so what was happening is they'd have like, I don't know, a friend or like a dad might be going around with them by foot, and would just be getting in the sections to to catch at certain spots. And, you know, it's at the end of the day, there was a rule for that not to be there. But who's going to really want to say no to those people when at the end of the day, it's just like, you know, Joe Blogs, me and you wanted to have a go and we don't want to hurt ourselves.
Yeah.
Which made it hard work for, like, I went to a few rounds with no one and it was like, oh, I'm at a bit of a disadvantage now because everyone's got someone running around for them, shouting the time and also sort of being in some certain spots to make them more comfortable when they're attempting the sections. And I had none of that going on. But I think it's good that they've got it clear that minders are allowed. It's because it was never that easy to stop having like people running around after you, really.
Yeah, I think it's good, but particularly almost for the kind of, you know, the Sunday kind of like warrior type rider that's giving it a crack. You know,
definitely gives them a bit more confidence.
Yeah, it's something that, you know, as you know, I'm not going to enter one of these events, but if I was going to, I'd want a minder on like every section, or probably every step of every section.
Yeah.
And last year that wasn't an option in the expert class, you know, and people will be like, oh, well, you don't need one. And it's like, well, there are riders that might attempt it if they had the option to have one.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's, you know, kind of quite important, isn't it? It's quite a, you know, safety issue at the end of the day when people are pushing themselves outside their comfort zone. Why not have a minder?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so it'd be interesting to see how that kind of plans out as well, or whether there be. I remember years and years ago, I think it was Geordie Pasquet at one of the World Rounds, not having a minder, you know, kind of riding like the top route of the World Rounds, and was just
I remember that.
Yeah, like I think it's like Hawkstone Park, and he was just like, well, someone will like catch for me.
Yeah, and in fairness, they did, didn't they?
Yeah,
you would see other riders' minders would go and sort of jump in and stand in certain spots for him. So yeah, fair play to Pasquet for that.
But yeah, it'd be interesting to know if anyone kind of saves in the 20 quid and doesn't have a minder. But then I suppose if the minders have got bikes, it's more than 20 quid, isn't it? Because, you know, you've got to have a bike for the minder to ride around on.
True.
You've got to fuel it. You'd also want the minder's bike to be the same as yours in a way, because you want to be able to swap bits and pieces if you have a big crash, don't you?
Yeah.
So all of a sudden you might be paying for that minder to stay in a hotel overnight and kind of, you know, giving them a bit of food and maybe even a tiny bit of expenses. So it is quite a bit more money to have a minder, isn't it?
You could just get your dad and ask him to pay for some of it.
You could do, yeah, but
not that I would do that, Dad.
Has your dad ever actually caught you?
I think he's caught the bike once or twice, but there's some funny stories that we'll probably have to tell at some time. But it was never his. He wasn't a born natural minder. Let's just put it that way. My dad. No. When he would say tyre left and then go, yep, 2 tyres right. Or when he'd say you have half a second left when he actually meant half a minute. But anyway.
But so minders in all classes, it would be interesting. And the youth will have, like the youth A and B will also have that as well. Just going back to the youth quickly, I think I saw in one of the comments is someone did point out that there is a bit of a gap for like the youth B girl class, because basically they're kind of isn't one in a way.
Okay.
So they're not going to do like the top routes. They're not going to ride the top championship. So it's a little bit kind of. I think someone was saying there is a chance that some of those girls won't kind of have like quite the same classes or a championship to ride, depending on when they were born. And it's all done on like the kind of the date of birth. So yeah, I think there was an issue there that was raised that maybe they'll look into and kind of work out kind of what's best to do. But it is all kind of, you know, they did say it was all very much kind of like work in progress.
It still hasn't been all totally finalised.
Exactly, totally finalised. But yeah, it's kind of, they also, which is different to how it's been before, is there's only going to be 2 laps of 12 sections. So basically all the events are going to be like 2-day events, and you're going to have 2 laps of 12 sections. I wonder if it's going to be different sections each day, maybe not.
That'd be interesting, because if we were to go to a club trial tomorrow and they'd say it was 2 laps of 12, we'd feel a bit underdone, wouldn't we? Really, we'd feel like you'd want at least 3 laps, wouldn't you?
I think
Maybe because there's so many riders are going to have to with the time. But
I think it's how they ride and how they like assess every section, and how every section is so technical.
so you're thinking they might be going for quality over quantity, so to speak.
Yeah, and it's something that the standard, compared with like a club trial and at club level, the standard is so high, isn't it? That they take so long to do a section.
True.
Because it's not just a case of, we're always getting told off at experts at club level, aren't we?
For taking too long.
And then you look at like that's not taking it away from the lower riders, or sportsman riders and sportsman plus riders, and even to a certain extent the clubman riders, but their sections are much simpler to walk and much easier to look at, and there's less kind of hopping to be precise or no hopping to be precise. So a lot of the time they can literally look at the starts cards. Where am I going? I'm going out the ends. Well, up there, around there, down there, done. Compared with, we're trying to be like accurate on a few parts, trying to be inch perfect with a bit of hopping.
Yeah, it takes that much longer, doesn't it?
It takes that much longer compared with, and the British Championship sections, there's going to be quite a few points in every section where you want to be absolutely perfect online, and that's the difference between cleaning a section or 5 in a section, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it'd be interesting it makes it I don't know. Personally, I always feel that more sections makes it slightly easier for the organisers, because you can have a wider range of, kind of sections, can't you?
Yeah, I always think, when I think of a trial of, say, maybe 15 sections, you could be like, okay, I want 5 easy sections. And then I might think of, I'll have 5 medium standard sections. Ones that are going to take marks, but not necessarily mean everyone's going to many people would 5 them. And then I think I'd put 5 harder sections in to sort out like the real top runners. And it gives you a bit of variety in the sections.
I think,
but with 12, they can still do that, but they're going to have to get it right, aren't they? Really?
Yeah. I think the days are gone of like having that, being able to have like a real easy section 1, that type of thing. Kind of. Which, I don't know, I think it's like, compared with like the S3s and like how kind of national trials are run, it's just the sport's becoming very split, isn't it, from that side of things? I think how different, like you've got, different kind of around here, you've got these like national events that are one thing, and then the British Championship's something else, and obviously trying to breed the next world champion, I guess, so it's difficult, isn't it? I'm not sure on that from my, kind of point of view. I'd have thought they would have had a few more sections, but then I'm kind of a bit removed from these style of sections and events, because I think Sam Connor was saying at the meeting, this is something that the riders really wanted. So if they're the ones, they're the ones doing it, and they want it to be,
must be for a reason, mustn't it?
Yeah,
like, they wouldn't have just plucked a number out of thin air, would they? There must have been thought behind it.
Yeah, well, I think it's the same as the World Championship, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't think they do loads of sections, do they?
No. But I think it's quite hard to put into words it's basically there's sections, they take every single section and every mark matters, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And they're taking every one so seriously that's why they take kind of 6 hours to ride 24 sections.
Yeah.
There's a lot of kind of head scratching and trying to work out how to do it, isn't there?
Yeah, definitely. So moving on again, there's only 4 rounds, isn't there, this year?
There's 4 rounds, but they're both like
they're all double headers.
They're all double headers.
So is it classed as 8 rounds then?
It's classed as 8 rounds. Yeah.
8 rounds, 4 weekends, which reduces the amount of travel and weekends spent away from home, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. So 4 rounds. They're all quite close together as well. Kind of time wise, not distance wise, because one of them's in Northern Ireland. So that one's a little way away. But so basically the first round is 14th and 15th of June at Inch Perfect. Then on June the 28th and 29th. It's kind of the only kind of like rounds close to us or down south is at Hook Woods. Then over in Northern Ireland on July the 26th and 27th. And then at the end of August, the 30th and 31st, there's a round at Scarborough. So yeah, it's kind of been quite a short time period, and all kind of during the summer. You know, it's kind of how these style of trials have gone, isn't it?
Yeah.
They're like, summer kind of weather, kind of dry going, aren't they?
Yeah, it is. Would have been nice to maybe have it mixed up a little bit more with some wetter, slippery conditions, maybe, as we are in Britain. But I mean, all of those venues are very well known for being like fantastic bits of trials ground, aren't they? So that's the one good thing going for it.
It's kind of it's interesting with there only being 4 rounds. I think they're trying to keep the cost down. So you have only got to go to 4 rounds, and the same with like the 2 weekend double headers, isn't it? You're not going, if that was 8 rounds at 8 different venues, it would cost quite a lot more.
True.
To be able to do that.
Yeah.
But then
Northern Ireland, though, that's going to be expensive.
That is going to be expensive.
Maybe they'll, like I've done the Jersey 2-day trial a few times, and sometimes at those they've done like a promotion with like a ferry company, and you've been able to get discounted tickets for that weekend.
Yeah.
Maybe it'd be nice if the organisers could try and see if they could do something like that.
Yeah, they could swing something like that. Yeah,
but the main competitors, if you're in for that championship, you'll be there.
Well, that's one of the things is. It was mentioned that you can't actually drop a round from this championship. Okay,
I actually think that's half good, to be honest, with there only being like the 4 weekends.
Yeah, so it is. I've always thought that's when it's like at this high end, and it's for the organisers as well, because it happens in all championships, doesn't it? Kind of Scarborough. If you're from down south, you might not bother going if you're not, you're not going to win it.
Yeah, it is. It's something, like you say, that suffers in all championships. We've seen it in the S3 National Championship that we've been doing. And I think you even see it at a certain point at like club centre level sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. People are, kind of, I thought I was going to do really well, and now I'm not. So, I won't bother doing the last round. I'll do something else. And it is a lot of effort, isn't it, to put on one of these events. It's not like literally just rocking up and sticking a few flags in the floor, is it? You're kind of trying to really make a big event.
Yeah, and it looks like they've kind of put some rough sort of time windows for the events as well, haven't they?
Yeah.
Looking at this, so it looks like this trial will start a lot earlier, with first rider potentially away at 8:30 a.m.
Yeah,
rather than the usual kind of. Well, no, national events does differ, but yeah, like 8:30's going to give you plenty of time to get riders out and spread out throughout the event.
Yeah, I think what they've tried to do as well is they wanted to basically make it so the last TRIALGB rider went off at the same time.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
So kind of, I suppose, spectators and everybody knows like when the real top guys are gonna kind of rock up.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's quite a good idea, I guess, to do that. And they've also got like section inspection like the day before from like 12 p.m. And then there's going to be like 2 different like kind of feedback windows. So you can say to Sam Connor or the clerk of the course or whoever's, kind of there as the kind of officials, that, we think these sections are, too hard, too easy.
Yeah.
And they're kind of, because it always makes me, I don't know how they set sections for the real top TRIALGB boys. I just don't know. I know myself, I wouldn't have a clue kind of at their level what's
possible and what's not.
What's
yeah,
not,
that's a good thing about having Sam Connor then, hopefully, being at all the events, because he's ridden at that kind of level. Yeah. So hopefully he'll be able to advise what's right and what's wrong for.
Yeah, he should. Yeah, he should be able to do that, because it is. I don't quite know where they start, because it's just, there's kind of 6-7 riders, and they're just such a high level compared with what us normal people kind of do on trials bikes, aren't they? Yeah,
and I suppose these events that are happening, like they've all chosen to put a round on, so they'll probably been going to the events. They'll have an idea, won't they? They won't be going into it blind, that's for sure. Yeah. I'm sure all of them would be able to put on a really good event.
Yeah.
Just takes a lot of effort, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, all good. So, you're happy that you went and had a look at that meeting then? That Zoom. that Zoom call?
I'm always, I do a bit of trials organising and kind of just wanted to have a listen and see what's happening. It's interesting that maybe I think there's about 65, 66 people like in the group chat. I think in the end, kind of, because you could scroll around a bit on Zoom, and I'm not a Zoom expert, so yeah. Well, no, I'm not a Zoom expert because I managed to actually draw a line on one of the slides. And I don't really know.
I see all these photos I'm looking at. Is that you? Is it?
Well, I don't know that's me, but I spoke to Milky from Jitsi the day after this, and he was like, I knew you were there because you drew a line on the slide and it came up with your name. So I was like, so yeah, all these people saw that. Obviously, I don't really know what I'm doing on Zoom, and I did wonder why they've all got a line across them. But yeah, so it was good to hear from Sam Connor and Pippa, she's like the ACU. I've got like a woman's like ambassador now for kind of ladies and girls kind of motorsport, which is kind of good to see, and kind of hopefully like even things up a little bit.
Yeah, I met Pippa at the ladies' round that was held by us. I think that was actually one of the first trials she'd been to, and it was definitely one of the first ladies' rounds in Britain she'd been to.
Yeah,
and she was all pretty impressed, and she seems really enthusiastic. So hopefully, good things will come from her.
Yeah. I think it's like it's good that they're trying something, isn't it? And they're, I think if you look at like the world championship, the Spanish championship, they have big entries, like a massive range of class of riders. Kind of, they think they even like do over 40 type classes, don't they?
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like we don't do any of that. Our British Championship is quite a small kind of number of riders in comparison, isn't it? Kind of.
Yeah, it is. And if you look over in Spain or Italy as well, they're run very much like a FIM world event.
Yeah.
And you look at Spain especially, they're producing top riders, aren't they? So they're doing something right. And I know that the Spanish Federation put a lot into it.
Yeah.
I think it's always been something in the past that people have complained about at the top level in trials is the support from the ACU, but it does look like the ACU are really trying to kind of move forward with it all now. So I'm excited to see, and I hope it all goes well.
Yeah, I do too. It'd be good for it'd be really good for the sport if we could have. Can you imagine if we kind of had like kind of 4 kind of mini world rounds? Kind of,
that'd be
kind
fantastic,
of in the UK. Yeah, and we have got a world round in the UK next year.
We do, yeah.
Yeah, and we've already booked our trade stands. Just so if you want to come and say hello, kind of we'll be
there over the weekend. Which hopefully all you trials fans will be there to support it, because it's not very often that we get a world round in this country. So
7 years, I think it's been.
Has it been that long? Has it?
Yeah. So it's a little while since they've all been over here.
Yeah.
So I think that's does that bring this podcast to a close? I think we've kind of
I think
enough.
It does, doesn't it?
We haven't done what's new in the shop this week. So I put Craig on the spot. See if he's paying any attention.
I'm paying attention. All right. We've actually just had the first batch of 25 model Shercos come through, haven't we?
Yeah.
The new SDF factories, which look really good this year. There's a bit more colour to them again. I think they definitely look the part.
Yeah.
With a few upgrades, and it kind of looks like they've upgraded them directed at the British market potentially, doesn't it?
Yeah, they've made them a little bit softer, haven't they?
Yeah, so they've got a softer map on them, and they've also got a slightly different curvature to the front pipe to make them a little bit softer and smoother power delivery, because they are very powerful machines.
Yeah.
I've ridden them all, 125, 250 and 300, and they do feel really nice. The quality's definitely got better.
Yeah.
You've been pretty impressed with from what you've seen of them?
Yeah, they seem to be good. Yeah.
Yeah. They've been a pleasure to build. They're easy on that front. So, but apart from that, I think that's it since the last podcast.
Yeah. So we've got basically, I think we've got all 2025 new bikes in stock now. So we're all kind of kitted up, ready for the new season. So we've got beaters and TRSs and You know, we've got them.
The Sherkos and Vertigos and Ossets.
Sherko, Vertigos, Ossets. We're dealers for all of those. So, yeah, if you like the podcast and you want to buy a bike, that would be great. Or if you just want some advice or wheel bearings, brake pads, we like doing all the boring stuff as well. You know, kind of.
Yeah,
so,
we're into that. We're
yeah,
into
yeah,
all the little bits and pieces.
Little bits and pieces. So yeah, assuming it's a bit of advice, or if you've got like an older bike, you know, kind of, there's nothing wrong with that. That's what's brilliant about trials. You know, kind of old 2005 Rev 3. You know, we could sort you out with some bits and pieces for that, and you can rock up at a trial and, you know, have a bit of fun. So yeah, it's not all about the high end stuff. So
That's it. Right. Well, thank you all for listening to this podcast, and hopefully we'll see you around soon. See you later.
Bye bye.
Keep up to date by following us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube.
Done. All good.
I was like, oh, it sounds more natural now we're finishing.
Yeah.
It's wicked.